Hi, I'm Jay Roberts.
And I'm Brandon Beligni.
And welcome to the Howard Roberts Sessions, a video series dedicated to the legacy of my father, H.R.
So come and join us at the campfire while we tell some stories and listen to the music of Howard Roberts, one of the most heard guitar players of all time. We're so thrilled to be able to share his incredible journey with you all. Make sure that you subscribe down below, and that way you'll get all the videos as they come out. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Howard Roberts Sessions. This is our first episode, and we're really excited to showcase the Howard Roberts Project documentary. It's a wonderful documentary about Jay's father and all the history there, and we're super excited to share it with you all.
Yes, sir. Yeah, this is a documentary that I produced back in 2014 with the help and dedication of friends and family. It's a lot of love that went into pulling this together, and we have 40 hours of footage that hasn't been seen on top of this documentary. So that's going to be released as well downstream.
Yeah.
Part one that we're going to view today is H.R. in his own words. It was actually a radio interview on NPR that he did with Terry Gross. And I think you're going to enjoy it.
The chilling staccato notes that introduced the Twilight Zone to television viewers each week were played by guitarist Howard Roberts. The sense of limbo that those few notes evoke is strangely fitting. Roberts spent almost 30 years as a nameless session player on thousands of TV themes, commercial jingles, movie scores, and rock and roll dates. Yet he was also an accomplished jazz guitarist. Howard Roberts died late last month, and few seemed to notice. There were several brief paragraphs on the wires and a short article in a newspaper in Seattle, where Roberts lived. By contrast, two British papers published relatively long appreciations. This bothered NPR's arts producer Tom Cole. He interviewed Roberts in 1983 and has this appreciation.
Howard Roberts arrived in Hollywood in 1950, not quite 21 years old.
Howard was a hell of a guitar player.
Drummer Chico Hamilton was getting ready to record his first album as a leader a few years after Howard Roberts arrived in Los Angeles. It was to be a trio date. No one could hide behind a studio orchestra. Hamilton hired Roberts to be his guitarist.
In the vernacular, if I was to say he had chops, I don't know whether your listeners would understand that or not. But by that, I mean, he knew the guitar extremely well. He could chord extremely well, and he could comp real good. By that I mean he could accompany, and comping in a rhythm sense, he had a good time feeling. And he played good lines, and he had fast fingers. So, man, that did it.
The story of Howard Roberts and his guitar begins on a street in Phoenix, Arizona, around 1936.
I was about 7 years old, and I was riding in the back seat of the car with my folks. I was sound asleep in the back, and I sat up out of the back seat, and I said, I've got to play the guitar. And everybody, my mom and my dad, they said, what are you talking about? I said, I've got to play the guitar.
Roberts got one and took a few lessons, but his teacher died. He couldn't find another. He couldn't find any instruction books either, so he taught himself by listening to big bands on the radio. Before long, he was a working jazz musician in segregated Phoenix.
By the time I was 14 years old, I could play 6 nights a week in a jazz scene, very intense and pleasurable, in black clubs, really on the other side of the tracks, a drag. I mean, you know, we still have things like that now. We had it then to an extreme. And I was the only white guy in that part of town, probably. And they treated me so nice and taught me about music and trained me. And they were wonderful people in that environment. There were a bunch of really hot players going on in Phoenix. It was one of those magic hotbeds.
By the time Howard Roberts recorded his first album, he'd already won Downbeat Magazine's New Star Award. He played with Dexter Gordon, Bud Shank, and Shorty Rogers. But Roberts said he didn't go to Los Angeles to play jazz. He was attracted by the studio scene and what he felt he could learn there.
See, I felt uneducated. I had good reasons for that because I was uneducated. I was married when I was 16. I had to drop out of high school after about a month and raise a kid. And so I was drawn to the movie writers and the quality of studio people in Los Angeles. Every guy in that place, it's like a who's who on flute, who's who on violin. I mean, it's the best in the world.
And Roberts got an education. He estimated that during the 29 years he was active in the Los Angeles studios, he averaged 3,000 songs and jingles a year. The work was not always gratifying.
There are a lot of studio calls that are limiting. That's true. You really sit there and just log your time away. There's actually nothing to learn and nothing to do. You're just there to make money. Now, that aspect of studio playing I hate. Always did. But you always take your highest integrity with you. So maybe this week you did 75% really dumb stuff and 25% you really learned something and it went somewhere and you made something that was really worthwhile. In that line of work, I think of myself as an industrial guitar player. I'm there to do a job. I'm not there to approve of it. Just get it done really right, like calling a good plumber.
Howard Roberts was one of the most open musicians I've ever met. Over the course of his long career, he experienced the changes in the popular music industry as swing and jazz were overwhelmed by rock and roll. He saw the role of the studio player diminish as electronic instruments and computers began to take their jobs. That was more or less okay with Howard Roberts. He felt it was the musician's job to adjust. Drummer Chico Hamilton put it this way.
He had that guitar player's thing. And by that I mean they were very much into their instrument. So subsequently they would just be content just to play some good music. And Howard Roberts he was cool all the way because he was just a regular dude, man. I mean, you know, he was a nice guy, a good human being. You could tell that from his playing.
I'd never stopped playing jazz because that, to me, is my sandbox. That's where I discover music in there. And that's what I always figured improvising was all about, was discovery by going to some place you've never been before.
Roberts never stopped learning either, and he tried to share his enthusiasm for it with younger musicians. He taught literally as soon as he learned to play. He gave guitar seminars around the country and helped found the Guitar Institute of Technology, now the Musicians Institute, in Los Angeles. He wrote a regular column for Guitar Player magazine.
I want to be literate in music. Bearing in mind that I didn't go to school, maybe I'm an overachiever because of that. But I want to be able to talk about it and know what I'm saying and be able to write about it and do a good job of writing. And I want to be able to play it, sing it, hear it. I want to be able to live the thing in the entirety. I wanted to be a master of the subject of guitar playing.
And Howard Roberts was. He died on June 28th. He was 62 years old. I'm Tom Cole.